There are moments when the walls of royal privilege no longer protect, when the grandeur of palaces and the titles on parchment cannot soften the weight of public disgrace. For Sarah Ferguson, Duchess of York, no longer in name, that moment has come again. And this time, she is not falling alone. Before we dive in, there's something I need to share with you. Over the past few days, thousands have watched these stories unfold, but most haven't subscribed. If you're one of them, I invite you now to join us. Subscribe to Crownverse so you never miss the next chapter in this unfolding royal history. The latest wave of revelation surrounding Prince Andrew and his ties to the late Jeffrey Epstein has pulled Sarah back into the kind of storm she has spent decades trying to escape. But now the scandal doesn't stop at her. It touches her daughters, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, the two people she has always lived to protect. What does it mean for a mother, already living on the edge of exile, to watch the sins of association reach for her children? What does it mean to realize that one careless connection, one resurfaced email, can stain not just your name, but your legacy? Reports suggest Sarah is on the brink of a breakdown, a phrase both familiar and tragic in her long, complicated life. Royal biographer Phil Dampier says her sister, Jane, has flown in from Australia to be with her, to offer support, to guard her from the loneliness that has become a shadow in her days. Sarah is in a bad way, he says, and it's hardly surprising, because, once again, Sarah Ferguson stands where she has stood before, between disgrace and survival. But this time the stakes are higher and the toll deeper. She is not just a scandal survivor, she is a mother, watching her daughters' names enter the same headlines that once destroyed her own. When the story first broke, it was familiar territory, another revelation in the long, winding aftermath of Andrew's friendship with Epstein. But this time, a single line from an old email set off a deeper shockwave. In a 2011 exchange, Epstein claimed that Sarah Ferguson was the first to celebrate my release from prison, and that she visited him in New York with her two daughters in tow. It's a claim Ferguson and her daughters vehemently deny remembering. And yet, the damage is already done. Because in the court of public opinion, accusation alone is often enough. It's not the truth that always matters, but the shadow it leaves behind. For Beatrice and Eugenie, now in their 30s, this shadow is not new, but it is heavier than ever. Both women have built lives that seem to signal stability, respectability, and distance from their father's notoriety. Beatrice is married to property developer Eduardo Mapelli Muzzi, a mother of a young daughter. Eugenie is married to Jack Brooksbank, raising two sons. Both have private careers and limited royal duties, and yet their titles, their very names, keep them tethered to a father and mother whose reputations the institution has quietly tried to bury. The resurfacing of Epstein's name, of those connections, of those insinuations, drags them back into a world they have spent years stepping away from. And for Sarah, that is the cruelest part. For all her missteps, Sarah Ferguson's love for her daughters has been the one constant in her otherwise turbulent royal story. She has spoken often of being a devoted mother first, a royal second, and a woman still searching for peace, somewhere in between. In public interviews, even at her most vulnerable, she has said, "My girls are my world." Now, that world is cracking. The timing could not be worse. Only weeks ago, both she and Andrew agreed to relinquish their remaining royal titles, a symbolic act that marked the end of their formal connection to the firm. No longer representing the crown, no longer invited to Sandringham for Christmas, their exile, once partial, has become complete. And yet, even in exile, the monarchy never truly lets go. Sarah has lost her charity patronages. Once a figure of lighthearted reinvention, the Fergie, who wrote children's books, hosted talk shows, and made her public comeback, now she finds doors closing again. The Natasha Allergy Research Foundation, Prevent Breast Cancer, Both have quietly removed her as patron, distancing themselves from her renewed association with scandal. And in the midst of all this, her daughters' names have appeared beside hers in print, not as royal patrons or smiling public figures, but as unintentional characters in a story about Epstein, a man whose very name carries moral and emotional corrosion. It's every mother's nightmare to see the consequences of her own past reflected onto her children. Sources close to Ferguson describe her as fragile, restless, haunted, not sleeping. She is, they say, trying to stay composed, but the pressure of it all, the loss of standing, the return of scrutiny, the impact on her daughters, has left her barely coping. She has always lived her life in extremes. At her best, exuberant and radiant. At her worst, chaotic and self-destructive. But now she seems caught in something beyond her control. The slow, public unraveling of reputation. Reputation tied to motherhood. Motherhood tied to love. For decades, Sarah Ferguson has walked the line between inclusion and exile. Tolerated, but never trusted. She was the royal outsider long before Meghan Markle inherited the title. But unlike Meghan, she never left willingly. She lingered, often literally, in the royal orbit, still living with Andrew long after their divorce, still attending family events, still hoping, perhaps, for redemption. But now the one thing that tethered her to royal respectability, her daughters' unblemished reputations, is at risk. And that, say those who know her, has broken something inside her. The psychological toll of disgrace is not new for Sarah. But this time, it comes with maternal guilt, because the daughters she raised to be kind, strong, and independent now stand in the crossfire of history's most toxic name. Even if the allegations are false, even if the email is misleading, the effect remains. They are now part of the conversation. For Beatrice and Eugenie, the pain is twofold. They have always loved their parents fiercely. They have never turned away from them. Not when their father was stripped of his titles, not when their mother faced
bankruptcy, not when the press called them the awkward princesses. They remained loyal, smiling, supportive, steadfast. But loyalty, in this family, comes at a cost. Their father's scandals have already limited their royal futures. They are royal by birth, but not by duty. Invited occasionally, photographed sparingly, employed privately. They exist in the liminal space between the institution that defines them and the world that judges them. Now, their mother's name has returned to the headlines for all the wrong reasons. What does that mean for them? For Beatrice, who has tried to live quietly as a working mother, it could mean fewer public appearances. For Eugenie, who once used her platform for charity and environmental advocacy, it could mean being watched more closely, trusted less by those who control the family narrative. And for Sarah, watching this unfold, it could mean something even worse. The realization that redemption may no longer be possible. Not for herself, not for them. Royal experts describe the atmosphere around the York family as suffocating. There are whispers that they have been fully disinvited from Sandringham, that even King Charles, known for his patience and diplomacy, has reached the end of his rope, that William and Catherine have drawn a hard line, privately expressing disappointment and fatigue over the continuing scandals. Within the monarchy, forgiveness has limits, and those limits seem to have been reached. The Yorks, once part of the inner royal circle, are now ghosts in its corridors, tolerated only in name. And yet, Ferguson's heartbreak is not political. It is maternal. In her mind, this is not about losing access to privilege. It is about losing the fragile safety her daughters once enjoyed as peripheral royals, safe, admired, untarnished. Now that safety has been breached. Imagine the image that haunts her. Her daughters' names beside Epstein's, printed in bold. The implications unspoken, the questions unavoidable. Imagine being a mother who cannot protect her children from history's cruelty, or from your own. Sarah Ferguson's story has always been one of reinvention. Each time she fell, she rebuilt. Each time she was mocked, she smiled through it. But this time, rebuilding might not be enough, because rebuilding requires trust, and the world's trust in her seems gone. Even so, there is something profoundly human about her struggle. In her fall, she is no longer the caricature of Fergie the Fool or the Duchess of Disaster. She is a woman in despair, a mother terrified that her mistakes have become her daughter's inheritance. And perhaps that is where this story becomes something larger than scandal. Because beneath the royal gloss and the tabloid cruelty, there is something universal. The fear of passing pain to your children. The heartbreak of watching your name stain theirs. The quiet grief of realizing that what you've spent years protecting them from has finally reached them. What happens to Sarah Ferguson now remains uncertain. She has lost her patronages, her title, her place at royal gatherings. She is, in every practical sense, an exile. And yet she remains bound to the institution by her daughters, by her memories, by her guilt. It's difficult to see what the future holds, says Phil Dampier. And perhaps that is the truest statement of all. Because this is not just a royal scandal. It is a human tragedy unfolding in real time. The disintegration of a public figure, a mother, a woman who has spent a lifetime trying to belong, and now faces the possibility that belonging will forever remain just out of reach. As her sister stays by her side, as the cameras linger outside her gates, as the palace maintains its silence, Sarah Ferguson must confront the truth that no royal crisis team can fix. Some losses cannot be reversed, and some shadows never fade. So we end with the question that hangs in the quiet after the headlines fade. When a mother's past threatens her children's future, can love, even royal love, ever be enough to shield them? And when redemption slips away for good, what remains of the woman who refuses to stop trying?